Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. We're talking national security matters and perhaps a little more. As you may have seen there, we've got Mr. Simon Lalong, Governor of Plateau State and Chairman of Northern Governors Forum. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning.
All right. Now talking about the recent happenings in the country, security, time and again, reports all over the country about students who have been kidnapped, usually in their numbers, either even those, this time around, there are people who were traveling, they were equally kidnapped, and people keep asking questions. They say government's not doing enough, governors not doing enough, security agencies not doing enough, or put a handle on this. From your perspective, what do you think is really going on?
Well, thank you very much. And you should also know that this is not an issue that started recently. It's an issue that started a very long time. Even when this government came, there were a lot of kidnapping, there were a lot of banditry, there were a lot of herdsmen, farmers crisis. So, sometimes when you have this kind of thing with very deep foundation, it is very, very difficult to say that you address the issue within a very short time. So within this period, there has been a lot of attempts to address some of these issues. So, but we keep on having some of them because we also are aware that even our security forces have their own challenges here and there. You recall that at one time we had to sit down, even at the last neck, that was what the governors came out to say, that we need to not only empower the security outfits, but also ensure that they have quality and also good equipment to handle security. That was why we now move to even alternatives like introducing the community policing and other aspects of security so that it can enhance and also enforce the security apparatus to handle some of these issues. Two, the fact that criminality is also getting highly technical. It is getting highly technical. So, and also very, very sophisticated. The other time we had discussions, we were also talking about how to make ourselves in our various states sophisticated in terms of equipment that can also meet up with the modern challenges of insecurity, especially in respect to criminality and kidnapping. But at times, the governors had to also complain that when you even get the equipment, it's very, very difficult to get the permission for end users. The end users' permission to use those equipment. So all of these are some of these issues that, for now, is being addressed because the last meeting that we had were also very, very far-reaching at the National Economic Council.
Yeah, okay, but Your Excellency, if one has been at the saddle or doing anything for 6 years, no matter what the person may have met on the ground, with due respect, I think the person would have known 6 years down the line whether or not he or she is capable of doing that job. So 6 years down the line, is it still tenable for anyone to say, well, we met certain things on the ground? Because I remember when the president came in, there were several meetings, he visited neighboring countries, hundreds of millions were approved, MNJTF was activated, different methods, different strategies have been activated. So if that still cannot be solved now, one wonders when it will be.
Well, at the risk of sitting down and making a defense for everybody, you also know that for me personally, usually when I
Yeah, don't worry, we'll sort that out and then just get it back on. So, yeah, we're just trying to get that perspective in because, you're not talking about someone who doesn't know anything about national security in terms of the president. He's a general. We know capabilities of a general. at any point in time in any army, in any part of the world. So you expect certain skill set to have coming. But I think he was trying to make a point. Well, not just going to speak for everybody, but everybody looks at government.
Oh, yeah.
But at the federal, state level, they are the people who were elected to solve the problems.
Absolutely.
So if they can't solve those problems, people will only say, you haven't solved the problem. And that is what it is.
And I think this issue about time, this is still short time, this time is not enough, has been recurring. And I think this is something that we heard from the very beginning of this administration. When this administration came in and said, well, it's still kind of too early. We're still trying to hit the ground running, but thankfully we have the governor back.
Yeah, Your Excellency, could you go ahead and make the point?
Well, the point I'm making is that you cannot say in total that nothing has been done. I think several times you have reeled out some of the things that have been done, especially in addressing some of these issues. Because when the government came on board, you realize that even the Boko Haram issue was very, very terrible. But today you can see that you are talking of even pockets of places. So I am not saying that perfectly we have done in this government, because I call it our government. I'm a member of the ruling government, and so I will also not say that I will take excuses for what is happening. But however, in terms of administration, I can always say that to give a blanket condemnation and say nothing has been done is not true, because so many things have been done and they are real out to say yes, we've done this, but if it is not enough, we'll do our best and continue to do more.
Well, perhaps, Your Excellency, the challenge here is not whether or not government is doing anything, because clearly from the reports that we're having, arms are being purchased, people are being deployed and all of that. Perhaps the challenge right here is the function we are trying to perform, which is that of fighting insecurity as opposed to preventing it. For instance, have we even been able to decode what the real issues are? A good number of security agents, security consultants will say that at the heart of all of this is inequality, unemployment figures, poverty figures, and all of that. So if we continue to fight as opposed to preventing, maybe that is where the challenge is.
Yes, you are absolutely right, because some of those issues were issues at the perspective of the Northern Governors Forum. I'm talking about now at the perspective of the Northern Governors Forum, which we also are making attempts to address. Because now, initially, it has when we came on board, there were these large issues about unemployment, and people were moving up and down. You can also know that the menace of Al-Majri system was what we also consider as likely potentials for insecurity in the future. So all those things, like I said, are things that you start addressing, but you cannot finish them in one day. So it may be what we're doing, but I'm sure the concept is that people will want you to do it within a very, very short time. Unfortunately, the incentives are not there available to carry out all of them at the same time within a very, very short time.
Your Excellency, the challenge of not being able to contain these things within the shortest possible time perhaps is also the reason for the shape-shifting of insecurity that we have seen over the years. You would recall what the Sultan of Sokoto said very recently, that the insurgents are shifting from what they are doing, insurgency, into banditry, into kidnapping and all of that, consequently even further exacerbating the risks at our hands. For now, we are dealing with farmer-herder clashes, we're dealing with kidnapping, we're dealing with banditry, while we are still, on the one hand, looking at insurgency from Boko Haram and all of that. If we do not contain these things on time, the shape-shifting of insecurity is not going to end. You would agree with that, I want to believe. So how do we take this on to ensure that we nip this in the bud so we don't see another shape or shade of insecurity in the nearest future?
Well, sometimes the political opinions and also engagements are also responsible. Now, let me just say one thing. Even when we came and we realized that what was really very prevalent was the Boko Haram issue and the issue of the herdsmen farmers. That was why the national livestock policy was introduced. But when we got to the period of implementation, there were a lot of problems here and there from even some regions of the nation. Some will say, no, we don't want anything national livestock. We don't want anything ranching because we don't have the land. Surprisingly, I've seen people come out today to say, we started ranching. We said at that time, if that, for me, the policy was well implemented at that time, today we would not have been talking about herdsmen farmers crisis because that policy was well drafted. Now people don't even care about reading it. By the time the word ranching was mentioned, by the time the word grazing is mentioned anywhere, people believe that no, this belongs to a particular ethnic group. So we don't even want to read what is contained in the policy to even talk about as accepting it to be implemented in our various states. Now today, you can see the menace is everywhere. I was part of those who sat down to even look at the livestock policy. A lady from Kenya, she's now being appointed at the UN, drafted this policy because she engaged us in Plateau State in addressing the issue of herdsmen farmers. Today, we don't have much of it in the state, and through that policy, and with the committee under His Excellency the Vice President, we said this is what will help. And that document was produced not produced during President Buhari's regime. That document first came up during President Jonathan's regime, and chaired by former governor of Benue State, with all other representatives from the zones to address the issue of farmers' herdsmen. And so the same document was transferred to a new committee under the Vice President, Professor Osinbajo. Now, even looking at it, people will say no, because it talks about cows, it talks about this, it talks about cattle colony, it talks about all other things. And it was jettisoned. Now, the policy is still there. Why don't we go back and look at it to address this issue? Because it was specifically not only about grazing, it was to assist the farmers, the herdsmen farmers conflict, and also empowering the farmers as well as empowering the herdsmen to be kept in one place in the process of implementation. But politics came in. Today, we're now going back to the same national livestock policy. If we had done that 3 or 4 years ago. So, in a political dispensation, sometimes it's not easy introducing and implementing a policy. Because by the time you move one step, you are also battling with National Assembly, you are battling with another part of the country that will tell you, no, even though we understand, we will not want to accept this issue. So the complications are always there. And part of it, we introduced and said they should take out $1 million from the excess crude, the one portion that belongs to the state governments, for the purpose of buying equipment. Up to this moment, that was why we also asked the question: what has happened to the 1 billion? So where are the equipments? So on the one side, security is controlled by federal government. That's why I said, when I say blame, I also take the blame, because this is our government. I'm not one of those that would say, because there's a blame somewhere, I say, no, I don't belong to this government. I am part of this government. I also take the fall if there is a fall from this government.
Mm. We'll talk about the National Livestock Transformation Program, especially because you recently met with the president and you spoke on that more. But with regards to timing, because that's something you have talked about, just to be clear, how much time is enough time, is long enough time to solve this? If you say that, this cannot be solved in a short time, and for a lot of people, they're thinking, well, between 2015 and now, that's 5-6 years. That's not short time. So just to be clear for Nigerians watching, how much time would you consider is enough time to sort this?
Now, let me tell you, the national livestock took almost 2 years, more than 2 years now. It's not an issue of time. We're ready for implementation.
Pardon me, this is not about the NLTP, Your Excellency. We'll talk about the NLTP, but I recall that during the course of this conversation, when talking about, the spate of kidnapping specifically, you said that, well, this cannot be sorted in a short time. So I'm talking about the insecurity, not the NLTP. We'll talk about that. So for Nigerians watching, when do you consider, how much time is enough time really to end this, or at least get a handle on this?
That's why I'm coming back to you. The NLTP is not all about farmers. It's about insecurity. It's about the general insecurity. When you are talking about kidnapping, kidnapping was also related to what was happening between farmers and herdsmen. So generally, it was something that was that is very, very comprehensive. For instance, if you are talking about kidnapping, within the scope of the NLTP policy, there is an issue of the introduction of the agro rangers. What is the purpose of agro rangers? Is to guide the forest. Now, if you keep them in the forest and they are also taking care of farmers and then and herdsmen, they will also be impediments to those who see kidnapping as occupation. How will they move in? It's because we are talking about forests, taking care of our forests today. That lack of taking care, lack of handling our forests, that people use the forest for these criminal activities. Now, if we are able to cover and guide our forests, why will they kidnap somebody to? The best they can do is to go and keep him in a room. For them, that one is very, very, is always very, very risky. And then the change of guards too. That's what we're also watching, the change of guards. Before now, people were now agitating and saying, no, it's because these people overstayed in office and we needed a change. We agitated for a change. We have that change. Now, all we need to do is to go back to the drawing board, get those equipments as quickly as possible, and then within this short time, see what we can do. The president is talking about a few months. Now we have the new guard. Let us also watch a little patience and see what is going, what they are doing. I know that in the last NEC meeting, I don't want to say I'm summarizing everything that was in the last NEC meeting. Everything there was summarized. And some of the issues that were all pending, these issues were started and then suspended. So most of them will have to go back to them from where we stopped so that we can fasten the pace for general security of the nation.
So, Your Excellency, back to my question. So how much time would you consider enough time, really?
I'm not the president. I'm not the commander-in-chief of the Federal Republic. If you're asking me about Plateau, I will tell you. I can claim to know. I'm not the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. I'm not the chief of army staff. I'm not the national security advisor. I think that your question should go to them. I don't want to start committing myself to tell you that within this period, when I'm not totally in control.
Well, interestingly, Governor Lalong, earlier on you said this is not enough time. Obviously, you knew you were not the president and the service chiefs at that time. But, well, we'll probably take that up with them subsequently. But back to the NLTP, which you talked about. You met with the president recently, and you said specifically now that you asked the president to hasten the implementation of the NLTP. During the course of this conversation, you said there were some skirmishes with some states saying, well, we're not ready to be a part of this. So on the part of the president, if you're asking him to hasten the implementation, what more does he need to do, or does the federal government need to do in light of the NLTP?
Well, what was now, you see, the issue was within the scope of the NLTP. The federal government had its own responsibility, while the states also had their responsibilities. Two, the fact that the policy was voluntary, because voluntary in the sense that they say, yes, you have the challenge in your state. You are likely, or you are envisaging that you are going to have that challenge of herdsmen farmers clash in your state. what do you do? Is to find ways, and these were some of the ways that we're going to do. Now to introduce the modern modern kind of husbandry, the livestock production. So if you want to do it, the role of the federal government was to now come in and for the state to provide a piece of land where they can do the pilot scheme. Federal government will do the subsidy. You have heard a lot of people saying it. In all aspects of life, especially in agriculture, most of these issues are given subsidy. There's no aspect of the agriculture that was not given subsidy except livestock production. And so if that is the case, and we saw that it's going to cure what was happening, then give that subsidy, release that subsidy, and then the state will now do the pilot scheme. For me, I have a land. Some governors say, no, they don't have land. And so it's okay if they don't have land for it. But about 22 states indicated interest and said they have lands for the exhibition. And when they said they have lands for the exhibition, as they move in to do it, you know politics was going around, and it was towards the election. So many of them ran away from the implementation. And now we came back again. I said, let's now implement it. Because everything, you will talk about herders, you will talk about farmers, clashes everywhere. Most of these crimes are now linked up to this, link up to those issues. So they said, now let's identify some of the states and do the pilot scheme. Most of these states have invested their money into this, in identifying the land, in doing enumeration, in sensitization with both farmers and herdsmen, and then now for the pilot scheme to start. Because once something becomes a national policy, they are also guided by rules. And it is the rules. We cannot just go and start doing it without the rule. And who is now giving the rule? Generally overseeing the rule is the federal government. So what is holding on to that issue? That today we are going back to it. So the best thing is to allow the states. 22 states, I'm aware. 22 states applied for it. By the time they release it, it's no longer talking about the election because you are afraid when you talk about grazing, people will not vote for you. It is about addressing the issues. And those issues, I want people to understand this concept and then the document itself of national livestock production, whether it will serve that interest or not. If it's not going to serve the interest, but through the sensitization and those who did this document, the vice president is aware, let's release it and allow the states to start. 22 states will start. You will not find farmers again, classes again. And once that is addressed, where will you see kidnapping? Where will you see banditry? People will now know that they have something to do.
We'd like you to just listen to this concern. It's about the National Livestock Transformation Plan. We need your response on it.
A benefit of what has happened in my state, a similar program of a Ruga settlement was not called Ruga in 1987. The government approved land that was taken from the natives in Zangon Kataf and Kachia local government and created a grazing reserve. And they call it Kachia Grazing Reserve. By 1990, it was changed to Laduga Grazing Reserve. And Laduga is a Fulani ward. And today, as I'm talking, it was an initial landmass of 30 hectares of land that was taken from the natives, no compensation. And up to now, no single native that is there that can even go there. If you go, you cannot even enter that place as a native. And huge development is taking place. Big buildings, big hospitals. You don't even know what is going on there in Laduga. And it has been surreptitiously increased in size to 70,000 hectares. And so if we have this Laduga...
70,000 or 70? 70,000.
70,000.
It means it was 30,000 as taken initially.
From 30,000. From 30,000, it has been increased to 70,000. And it is still there. So there is the plan is to replicate this Laduga model all over the nation, thereby changing democracy, the political democracy, the demography, the economic demography, the social demography, the cultural demography of a people all over the nation. and Fulanize every place in the nation.
These are fears that you have.
These are fears. These are not only fears. This is something that is happening to me.
Yes.
I'm giving testimony.
Yes, this is something that you've seen happen.
This is something that we have seen happen in Kaduna State, in southern Kaduna.
This is the
and
fear.
we, the land of our people, we cannot get there. We cannot go to farm. We cannot, this is the land that was taken over from the people. It was not compensated for, and we cannot go there to farm. We have become second-class citizens in our own state, in our own country, and somebody is saying that it is fears, only fears. This is real. The fear is real, and the replication of this model all over the country, and the intent is real. We have IDPs scattered all over this country. Now it is rainy season. Several hundreds communities are living in the rain. They have living in the scorching sunshine. They are now living in the rain. They cannot get back to their farm. They will be starving. They don't have medication. And nobody has talked of establishing exclusively, settlements for such category of citizens of the country. Only to talk about Ruga, that the Ruga settlements will bring about peace between herders and farmers. How will it bring about peace between herders and farmers? And we are saying, even in the northwest region, there is a category that has been displaced in Katsina and Zamfara and other states of the core north by this armed banditry. And they are all IDPs within the country. Nobody has thought of creating any settlements for such category of people. And we are talking about Ruga. So this program from the onset has some ulterior motive.
Your Excellency, we'll get your response when we return in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Your Excellency, please go ahead and respond to the concerns raised in that clip, which we just saw from the Middle Belt Forum in Kaduna.
Well, I thank you very much. I know he's my friend, he's my brother. But you see, these are some of the misconceptions I earlier mentioned. Without reading a document, people draw conclusions. During the time of the introduction to NLTP, NLTP is quite different from what he's saying. He's talking about Ruga. Even the Ruga thing that came, I said no Ruga in my place. And so the Ruga was jettisoned. The president wrote and said, look, what I approve is national livestock production, not pollution policy, not Ruga. The Ruga was because people had challenges. They were already in conflict with our farmer settlement conflict that were going on. It was difficult for anybody to even talk about Ruga. The Ruga concept is quite different. The national livestock production is quite different. For instance, somebody will tell you, I don't want ranching. I have examples of several ranches in Jos. Plateau State government has a ranch. Plateau State government has a big ranch. Now, at the time that we were talking, some people will tell you, no, we don't have lands. We said, no, they are not forcing anybody to bring land for the livestock policy. The only time that you can bring land is if you have the land, then federal government will help you with some money to develop that land as an example. Now, most of the states came and said, no, we don't have any land. In the north, by history, the grazing reserves were done for that purpose. These were done in the First Republic. And why was that? People, even in that First Republic, envisaged that this problem will come up in years to come. And that was why they developed some areas, carved out some areas as grazing reserves. Now, along the line, with the outcome of military regimes, many of those lands were taken over. Even in my state, most of them, it was military regimes. Military people took over the land. They were sharing the lands to themselves. And so when the issue came, especially those of us in the north, the question was, do we have land? Some states said they don't have land. Now we went back to the archive in Kaduna and dug out the documents. And many of the states that said they didn't have land came out with grazing reserves. Some of them 8, 9 grazing reserves. But where were they? Taken over by big men. So if you say you don't have land, recover the land. And recover the land for this purpose so that you can cure this insecurity. He's from Kaduna. I knew what happened. In the process of this, I had engagement. Myself, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, all appointees and elected Christian minorities within the region had several engagements with key stakeholders. They cannot dispute that fact. We had in Abuja about 3 or 4 times. And each time we had the engagement, they will say, this is lack of sensitization. If we knew that this was an explanation, We did those explanations. Apart from that, I had 3 summits in Plateau State for religious leaders because the concept was that, no, they are trying to Fulanize us, they were trying to do. I said, ranching is everybody's business. It's not it's not only a Fulani business. The modern kind of ranching is no longer an ethnic thing, and we're doing this for the purpose of addressing the insecurity in the nation in respect to farmers' herders conflict. Now we did that in Plateau. I know that I did 2 or 3 summits for religious leaders, both Christians and Muslims. And at the end of the day, even the Fulani man was against it. He said, "No way, I cannot leave my modern kind of grazing." But we introduced what is livestock to him by giving him example. What did I do? I invited all the arrows. I said, "Give me one cow. Give me a cow each." They brought a cow each. I said, "Okay, this is government cow. I will tell you, I'll teach you an example." We did insemination, crossbreeding to the cows, kept it behind their backyard with fodder and everything. After 6 months, it was a different cow. And the level of milk that was coming out from it was a different thing. And they asked me, they said, "What kind of magic did you do?" I said, "This is the livestock that we're talking about. Instead of you moving about in the bush, we'll keep you in one place. You will stay in one place. Just give us those cows. If you give me 10 of it, you don't need to go be roaming in the bush. We will produce this one. You will take the milk. You don't need to go and sell. We will do the takeoff and everything." And all of them were comfortable. And that was why they now came back and said, "Look, we are going to key into the livestock scheme." They signed. The farmers signed. They signed. While you are also addressing the herders, you are also addressing the farmers. And there will be an interchange. While this one is producing cows, the other one is producing fodder. So we have a very large farm. The grazing reserve that we're talking about, in Plateau State, when I came, I said, look, in Benue State, there were eight grazing reserves. In Plateau State, there were 6 or something, about 6 grazing reserves. Big grazing
Of your
reserves.
explanation.
4 of them,
but I'm curious, you say that the National Livestock Transformation is not the same thing as Ruga, that you oppose
Yes.
Ruga. Can you explain to us
Yes.
what is the difference between the National Livestock Transformation Plan and Ruga?
Now, let me tell you, while the National Livestock Plan was going on, because there were 6 governors representing Governors Forum, I was one of them. 6 governors who had challenges in their place, and the chairman was the vice president. We were having meeting and produce this to conclude on the implementation of the National Livestock. When we saw a new idea came, people were going to build settlements, and then they call it Ruga. It is rural grazing areas. And we say, no, why are you bringing another one? The main one that is approved by NEC is National Livestock Production Policy, which is under the vice president, and all of us were members. Now, who was bringing this one again? And immediately when it came to the attention of Mr. President, I remember that the very day we were going to have the meeting, the president wrote a letter and said, look, discountenance that Ruga, go on with the National Livestock Production. That was sometimes last year. So we are not talking about Ruga again. We are talking about National Livestock Production. And out of it, they said 7 states were going to be picked for pilot scheme. And these 7 states includes Plateau, Adamawa, Nasarawa, Kaduna, and some other ones. Now, let's do the example and address these people. People are talking of Ruga. Some call it colony at that time. We said, no, you can't give any colony to this thing. Colony is different. Whoever was bringing colony was his own. But what we address, because people were now, those who didn't like it were bringing different kind of things to frustrate the National Livestock Policy from taking off. This is part of the politics that I'm talking about. Today, if you allow it, I want to send a copy to you. I'm going to send a copy to China.
You still haven't explained fundamentally. I mean, apart from the name, rural grazing areas, apart from the name fundamentally, it wasn't the plan the same thing to ensure that, herdsmen were settled and livestock were taken care of? Primarily, isn't that the underlying, aim of each of these schemes?
Well, I'm just telling you that I was not, for me personally, I was not aware of anything Ruga. The Ruga is a name, is rural grazing area. That is brought by colonial masters. But then for us, especially, we look at Ruga, anytime they are talking about Ruga, is Fulani settlement. That one is obvious, it's a Fulani settlement. Because anytime Fulani come, they say, no, they are going to settle in their Ruga. That is the Fulani settlement. Now, whoever brought that, I don't know why he brought that, to say that, yes, we are building places. The first thing to do is to start building to rehabilitate Fulanis. But the question we're asking, if you are talking about that, then what about IDPs that are in camp? People who are displaced from their places. Why do you start building in their places when they are in IDP camps? At the end of the day, so you can see the difference. But in livestock production, it's not about Ruga. It's not about building places for people. It's a comprehensive thing about taking care of farmers, putting farmers and herdsmen in one place, and also ensuring that they mix up, there is security, and all of them know that, yes, there is even no risk to each other in the process of carrying out their occupation. So it is not something that can be explained always. But when we started, you remember, Challenge, you were also part of it. I'm sorry to say, because the kind of reception that was given was a different kind of perception. That anything about livestock production was all about Ruga. So the mixture of this did not allow Nigerians to understand this thing. So by the time you do sensitization, I told you an example of what we did in Plateau State. Today, Plateau State was ready. We have the land. We have one of the grazing reserves that we secured. If we didn't secure it today, it would have been taken over again. They were already encroaching of it. 74,000.
Your Excellency, I don't know if you heard the fears of the gentleman in the video. He was very specific about the political makeup, changing the political face of a particular area. And he said that, you know, their fears were that this was going to be replicated in many states as they had experienced in his own state of Kaduna. Now, that was what he said. Did you listen? Did you hear this when you were embarking on your sensitization? And how were you able to address it?
This is what I'm saying. I said, yes, these things were interrupted by those kind of things, political interference. And such interference was in some places not to even allow people to understand, to do sensitization. I was the one that was heavily dealt with when we started, they say I'm the only Christian state that registered into it because I want to take my land and give it to Fulani. I said, which kind of land to Fulani? I have Fulanis in my state. I have two first-class Fulanis in my state, first-class chiefs. I have 2 or 3 local governments that are entirely, headed by Fulani people. This issue we're handling is that if we are matured and then we sit down to look at the items that will take us out, you ask the question. We also ask that question. We say, okay, apart from this, what is the other alternative? Nobody will bring you any alternative. Nobody will bring you an alternative. So the national livestock thing is not all about North. It's not all about Fulani. The man that is chairman of the committee, the subcommittee at the villa, is the governor of Ebonyi State. He's the governor of Ebonyi State. The governor of Edo is a member. The governor of, I think, Anambra also is not Anambra, is Ebonyi, Ondo, and Edo, all of them from the south. And then you have Plateau State, you have Adamawa, you have Kaduna. 6 governors representing those regions. And so the best thing is that let us go back to National Livestock, NLTP. Let us look at the documents there and see whether it can be implemented. And that will be the solution. As I'm talking, I know that the president said it is NLTP. He's not talking about any Ruga. So I've told you the implementation is different. So if somebody is talking about Ruga, that's a different thing. And I don't think there was anything Ruga that was accepted by the National Economic Council. But the NLTP was adopted by and the NLTP was adopted by the National Economic Council, and then a committee set up chaired by the vice president, which took almost 2 years to adopt the document for implementation.
All right, Your Excellency, we're winding down now. We understand that you have to run. So before you go, could you talk to us about what is your impression about this herdsmen crisis? There are lots of arguments about why should they bear AK-47, why shouldn't they be arrested? And then northern governors banning open grazing. Does that then mean that whoever is found grazing openly should be arrested?
First of all, you must provide the alternative. You don't wake up today and say, no, you can't do poultry. If you say you are not going to do poultry, those who are into the thing will ask you, what alternative are you giving us? What alternative are you giving us? This has always been my point. Open grazing is at fashion. But what do we do in addressing the issues? We must be able to teach people the modern, introduce the modern kind of animal husbandry, and also teach them and sensitize them before they understand. Otherwise, you just wake up tomorrow and say, no, you can't, you ban it. It will be difficult. To be honest with you, it will be difficult to implement because not everybody will understand with you. It will be difficult to implement. And so those are some of the concepts that you see. You need a whole period, not this short period for me to give this kind of explanation. It has been done before several times, that's just last year. But unfortunately, at the time that we were discussing this issue, it was towards the election. So when you are discussing, nobody will agree. The papers will not agree. Everybody will finish you and will say this. But today, we are now seeing the difficulty. We are now seeing the hazard of allowing people to be doing open grazing here and there. But they also want solution. By the time you explain to them, they also want to stay in one place. They will also want to keep away from carrying AK-47. I'm not justifying any AK-47 for anybody to carry AK-47. But don't forget, in the course of our deliberation on investigation, it was not only Fulanis that were carrying AK-47. Even farmers were carrying AK-47. Farmers were also carrying AK-47. Because when you talk about that, it is just proliferation of arms in respect to guiding and everybody trying to protect himself. We shouldn't allow people to continue to have self-help. When they talk about AK-47, I've not seen anybody talk about that. But at the time that there were farmers-herdsmen clashes, yeah, we arrested people. Farmers were also had AK-47, and the herdsmen were also holding AK-47. Were also holding AK-47. So if you want all of them not to hold AK-47, first you must put deliberate effort to even curtail the issue, the influx of these light arms, anyhow. And secondly, to also find ways of taking these people away from the their old type of farming, and then introduce them into the modern system. That is why we're holding our meeting in Kaduna, in the north, and to address the issue. We have said no, we can't continue with open grazing. But what is the alternative? That is the document that we're presenting, and then going back to our various states to sensitize and begin to find ways of putting people together in one place, no longer allowing them to be moving up and down.
Well, Your Excellency, we are all itching to ask you follow-up questions on this matter because there are so many grounds that need to be covered. But as you rightly said, there isn't enough time, and we understand that you need to go. But, and pardon me for doing this on TV, would you be willing to come back as soon as possible so we can have some time to at least talk about these matters for Nigerians to understand what's going on and your position properly?
I'm always very willing. I'm always very willing. If I finish from the Northern Governors Forum, let us get all the reports. You will see what I'm talking about. Then you find time. If you like, bring those who are also against. Sit down. Let's sit down and discuss this thing openly. Otherwise, politics will take us from what is good and what is going to be for the benefit of this country.
Consider it done, Your Excellency. We do thank you for your time this morning. We've been speaking with His Excellency Simon Lalong, Governor of Plateau State and Chairman of Northern Governors Forum. Thank you for your time again today.
Thank you very much.